Hey, hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is Kogonada, the filmmaker who announced himself as a thoughtful, empathetic voice with his first feature, the tender drama Columbus, back in 2017. His new movie, After Yang, is an ambitious and even daring follow-up, a gentle, shattering sci-fi film about a family thrown out of balance when their android crashes, and I'm happy to report it's one of the best films of this new year. It's playing in theaters in the US right now and opening in Canada this Friday, March 11th. Kogonada picked Afterlife, the film that put Japanese writer-director Hirokazu Kore-eda on the map in 1998. It's a tiny, beautiful drama about a handful of newly deceased people who find themselves tasked to make a movie of their favorite memory so that they may carry it with them for eternity. It's a lovely idea and a remarkable movie. And if you haven't seen it, please do that before you listen to this episode. Not that there are spoilers exactly, but it's so much better if you already carry the movie with you, as it were. One small note, this week's episode, I think, is our shortest ever. And you know what? I'm not apologizing for that. If all I could get was 15 minutes with Kogonada, I was damn well going to take it. This is Someone Else's Movie.
You know, that film, I've revisited it so many times. It has worked. You know, I think the first time I saw it, I was just so surprised by that it's so speculative and fantastic, but also approached in this real, almost documentary sense. And at the time, I don't think I knew so much about Kore-eda. I'm a huge Kore-eda fan now, and realized that he had started with documentaries, and just even the approach to that sort of world and the questions he asks about it. At the time I was sort of dumbfounded by it, honestly. And then it made me watch Mabarosi, as you do when you discover a filmmaker that stops you and you're trying to make sense of why it's so moving. I've recently felt that with Hamaguchi, and just have to, what is he doing that is so mesmerizing to me and getting, under my skin in a way that I so deeply, that feels almost like a gift. And I had that moment with a while back with Kore-eda, and it started with this film. And I don't think I realized, this was a great, when this was presented to me, I didn't, it's funny because when I was making Afterlife and writing it, or After Yang, I wasn't thinking about Afterlife or trying to, parallel it. But, of course, now it's like in dialogue, I feel like it's in dialogue. And then, there was that moment when we were talking about an alt title, that I always loved the title, the English title. Usually I love the original title, but the English title for Afterlife, I always loved it because I love the double meaning of after, that after is both, a marker of time post life, but it also reflects the pursuit of something. Mm-hmm. And I always thought like, oh God, that's so lovely, because I think that film is also about the pursuit of life. Like what is life after all? And I felt, and so, cheekishly, After Yang has that quality in me, that is both after his life, but Jake's pursuit of Yang. So there was definitely that element that I borrowed. But, since knowing about your podcast, I was thinking about that. And I just think, there's so much dialogue. I think that, of course, that film has been within me. And as I was writing After Yang, I find myself, knowing that a lot of those questions that I asked about Afterlife are in After Yang as well.
Yeah, as soon as you picked it, it came together for me, because I would not have, having seen After Yang, I didn't make the connection. And then you chose it, and I thought, oh, of course, it's it's the DNA. We're interacting with the story moving forward and backward at the same time in much the same way. Although in Afterlife, Kore-eda is doing it for all of his characters. Yeah. Even the ones we don't understand are performing functions. And After Yang is much more, the memory aspect is coming from a single perspective. Yeah. Yeah. But they're both about, it's almost a cliche to say this film is about grief because everything is supposed to be about grief right now.
Yeah.
Superhero movies are about grief. Children's cartoons are about grief. But both Afterlife and After Yang are about grieving, which is different.
Yeah.
And it really struck me this time through that they both come to a place of, if not peace with it, acceptance. And the way both films separately find a way to that acceptance, and the way that Kore-eda makes it feel almost triumphant. That's the thing that has stuck with me. I saw it, I think I must have seen it at TIFF when it played there at a press screening. And all I remember of my response initially is, oh, this doesn't look great. And then, because it didn't. And then at the end, it didn't matter at all. And now, like 20 odd years later, I think that the texture of the film, he shot the interviews on 16 millimeter, but the bulk of the film was it DV or was it wasn't HD cam, but it was some.
I think it was an HD. Yeah.
And it works against the experience, the rapture that you're supposed to see in the concept. But the way those two formats clash and we get a sense of what's real and what isn't, and what's important and what isn't, is subtly woven through the entire film. And in After Yang, you're doing that with aspect ratio. You're just sort of quietly, casually playing with the frame in a way that becomes genuinely poetic towards the end.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I know that with, we knew that there were going to be different kinds of temporal experiences in our film, and we didn't want to use VF, even though and again, maybe this is also an influence with Afterlife, because the approach was to, even though we know it was a world of speculation and sci-fi, that we wanted to keep everything very grounded, and I wanted the language of cinema to be the effect, and not adding like some, graphic that would suggest that you're in Yang's memory or some tint or something, but that we would just change the aspect ratio and the lens. Every reality had a lens for it. And that would capture it in that way. I mean, there is human memory there, which is differentiated by the repetition of those scenes and the more elusiveness of trying to recollect memory in our film. But I love that. And I think Afterlife is also in many ways a film about filmmaking too, and making the choices of what you put on a screen, and what is those value judgments, and I love that he uses VHS cassettes as this sort of library of human history. So there is something so much about the material world of capturing life that exists in Afterlife.
And it's weird to see the film reverberate through new voices, other filmmakers, and another generation. Have you seen 9 Days?
I haven't. It's on my list, and people have said that it has a conversation with Afterlife. So.
It's remarkably fluent in that conversation, in a way that tells you right off the top that he's seen it and loves it, and he's not going to do the same thing.
Oh, interesting.
And it's really remarkable. That all of a sudden, and obviously these projects are both After Yang and 9 Days were conceived before the pandemic and developed for years. That's just how it works. But they're arriving at the time when, I don't know if we need them the most, but I certainly do. We're reckoning with so much. And the other thing that really struck me when the Criterion edition of Afterlife came out, and I got a chance to not just to rewatch the film, but to dig into the supplements and just live in it for a while. I didn't know that he had originally, that Kore-eda had originally started putting it together to deal with dementia, to deal with the occurrence of dementia in his life.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. This is all new to me. So that's incredible. Yeah. It's on Wikipedia. I'm assuming it's true. But he said that it was a childhood experience with his grandfather, who suffered from a neurodegenerative disease in a time when this kind of syndrome was not yet well known, but it was clearly dementia. He lost his memories of his family and his world. And having just gone through something like that in my own extended family, and it lands differently. It's the kind of film that evolves with you, which I find absolutely amazing.
that it's waiting for me to catch up in ways that I don't even comprehend.
I love that. Yeah, no, and really the films that I love and have stood the test of time in my own life have that quality. I'm just experiencing it now because, my kids are now at a certain age, and even like I loved Ozu from when I was younger, and God, it has such a different texture and flavor and who you identify with. And, it really, those films can live through time with you. And certainly Afterlife has been that way. And things that used to befuddle me now make, like resonate deeply with me, and vice versa. It's really, it's again, like a gift, it's a real gift when you find that kind of film.
Yeah. And when did you find Afterlife? At what point in your life did you first encounter it?
Yeah. I mean, I think I had, I think it was after I had sort of discovered Ozu, and I was really starting to, I kind of came into cinema or international film through Europe, like a lot of people do, through Truffaut and then Godard, and really engaging that whole moment. And it was, it was that real discovery that film didn't have to always be, presented in the way that, Hollywood offers film. And is not a critique, of all Hollywood films, only that, that there could be a different pace and rhythm and a different even world of decision making, why they were offering up these worlds. And it really like fundamentally helped me think through what it meant to be human, what it means to exist. But there was also something, I think, some element of me that it resonated. And I lived most of my life negotiating like a European white culture. I was studying like Western thought. So it was all sort of resonating. And then, when I started discovering Ozu and Asian cinema, it hit at some other level that I didn't even realize, like almost felt like something that was both so unfamiliar and unfamiliar. And then I went down the rabbit hole of Asian cinema, and and Kore-eda came pretty early in that, because I think people were saying that he was like the next Ozu. And of course, if you watch his film, Mabarose is maybe as close as he gets. And I think he has said that he's more like Naruse, but it's not as if he follows the formality of Ozu, but there is something I would say, but it tastes like Ozu. It's not maybe, but there is, I understand why, because you walk away and it stays with you in a way that has a lot of similarities. So it was during that real era of discovering, a whole world of cinema, but his stood out. And, even now he is probably my definitely, top 3 favorite contemporary filmmakers. Anytime he has a film, it's a celebration for me,
Yeah, I'm always excited, and it's weird. I always forget from film to film, and I think it's just because he changes up his genres and plays with things in ways that I don't expect. That when something like The Third Murder comes along, I'm just like, oh, really? Okay. And it's never a bad thing. It's always this intriguing spark of curiosity, this sense that I'm going to see something new, even if I recognize the genre. And when you mention Ozu, the comparison absolutely stands. Yeah, for me, I think of things like Father Like Son, which could completely easily be an Ozu film if it just was slower and more formal. But he's interested in the conflicts, but not in the style.
No, the dynamic and how he is trying to understand family, and you see it in his latest film as well, is in that same sort of pursuit. No, but I feel the same way, when he did Hana, that samurai film, and kind of in that genre of like revenge samurai, and then you watch it and you're like, oh God, this is such a Kore-eda film. It's an anti-revenge film, this reluctant samurai, and it's lovely in its own way. And I think I saw Erdal a while back, that.
I always forget about Erdal.
And you just see it in the language about what he really cares about, no matter how speculative or fantastic the genre is. He always is grounded in something that you can tell he's occupied with, and again, for me, Afterlife was a real start of it. And I think like you, I think I probably had a critique of it. I think both the visual form of it and even dealing with I think at the time I was very into like contemporary drama, and anything that diverted from that, I was just like, but it was again one of those films that, as much as I thought, I was trying to, when you're younger too, you're just a little bit more eager to critique or create some, some sort of distance, but it worked its way in me. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I revisited it, and then you have to sometimes be honest with yourself. Like you have some theory, but you undeniably love it, and that's the thing that I think filmmaking itself has humbled me from my little theories that I had, but also life itself. I'm just so glad that really trying to be honest with how you feel about a film, regardless of some idea, that you have. And it was a real breakthrough in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember if it was Billy Wilder or Richard Lester, but somebody, it's a great quote from that era of somebody saying, like, what does your film mean? And the response was just, it means I finished it.
Right.
I got it out the door.
Yeah. No, that's really what your film theory becomes when you start making films. It's all, it's like, it's hard nowadays to even critique any film because it's such an accomplishment to finish a film. It's such a, I understand that now at a very visceral level. And I know that, people have worked very hard for a film to be, finished. So, yeah.
My thanks to Kogonada, whose beautiful, moving new film After Yang is in theaters in the US right now and opening in Canada this Friday, March 11th. Thanks also to Kate Parks and Olivia Nasser at Elevation Pictures. They know what they did. You can find Kogonada on Twitter @Kogonada, all one word, and you can find Afterlife on Blu-ray and DVD in that lovely Criterion edition I mentioned earlier. It's also streaming on the Criterion channel along with most of the supplements. As always, you can find me on Twitter @Norm Wilner and elsewhere on the internet at nowtoronto.com, where I host the Now What podcast every Friday and write far too many words about movies and television. And you can find this podcast on Twitter @Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it, or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been enjoying us. Every little bit helps, it truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're there. Stay safe, watch movies, wear a mask if you go out, get your booster when you can. I'll see you next time.